driving viewership, better user experience and value in connected entertainment. Please give a warm welcome to the stage, Gabriel Cosgrave and Zach Belmont.
All right, you good? Keeping you from your cocktails. I should start with saying I'm a very proud Irishman sitting up here. That's a shout out to Cillian Murphy. Just won an Oscar. We're not talking about rugby though. Okay, let's start with Xperi, and then I'll hand it over to Zach for an introduction perspective. So, Xperi comes from the word experiences. We create extraordinary experiences in connected entertainment. That's the famous tagline we have. More relevant, I guess, for people that may know, we own brands like TiVo, DTS, HD Radio. We partner with IMAX for an IMAX Enhanced program. But I think for this topic, as we heard of different topics over today, talking about scale and footprint and aggregation, we'll get to all of that. But I think to better understand where we come from and why our partnerships are so important is really to touch on the different markets we operate in and why multi-market is where we see this conversation broadening. So Xperi has been operating in the video over broadband, pay TV, IPTV world for many, many years. We have close to 50 million households between North America, LATAM, and Europe. With that, we own, as I said, a CE business, which is DTS Audio, which puts us in tens and tens of millions of different devices, anything with sound. And then obviously we're in the connected car business from our AutoStage platform, but also more recently with BMW, what we're doing with cars powered by TiVo, which has been a recent announcement enough in the last kind of 6-9 months. And where all of that comes together in some ways is what we call media platforms. And media platforms is really the base of everything that's powered by TiVo, but it's also our own ad tech stack. We have our own ad sales teams, I should say. And that really opens the door for what we do with our content partners. And we're lucky enough over many 25 plus years to have a lot of relationships across those different markets that open the doors to a lot of different studios and partners that we work with, and gives us that scale to go multi-markets. With that, Zach.
Thanks, Gabriel, and thanks for having me today. I'm Zach Belmont, Vice President of International Programmatic Revenue at Paramount. What does that mean, though? So, of course, programmatic being the key component there, commercial. So everything I'm going to talk about today will be with that commercial eye, that commercial lens. I'm working across, of course, monetization first and foremost, but collaborating with multiple different facets of the Paramount business, whether that's content, licensing, distribution, strategy, you name it, basically. Myself and my colleague Carol here today, we are providing that commercial view for the rest of the business to make informed decisions from quantifiable data that can help drive further success and ultimately more revenue for Paramount. So there's a lot in that, but my day-to-day at the moment is really around pushing the launch of International IQ. So for those of you who aren't aware, IQ is our total video product. So it brings together all of Paramount's previously fragmented, siloed platforms, such as My5 in the UK, which is actually about to merge with Pluto TV later this year. We, of course, have our fast AVOD service, Pluto. We have our pay TV and linear channels. We have presence across all major social channels as well. And we use all of these different platforms and aggregating them within the IQ product to provide one consolidated, easy to activate buy from multiple different platforms, but from one single touch point. So that's been a really interesting push as we announced it back in November last year. And now we're starting to realize budget. There's a lot of agency, advertiser, and programmatic indirect partners that we're working with to help evangelize and push out these great content offerings. The other side of what I've been across is also really exciting. So our SVOD proposition, Paramount Plus, that's now launching its ad tier. So we've announced, I believe it was tail end of last year, but very much now coming up very soon. Can't mention the dates, but Canada is the next to launch, and Australia will be the next to launch after that. Further EU markets and rollout will be, forthcoming, but yeah, we're going to test the water a bit for international in Canada and Australia, where we see a great opportunity. But of course, for the rest of Europe, for the rest of international, we're very excited to be launching P+ out there as well. So yeah, it's been keeping me busy, to say the least.
Yeah, making great strides. And fantastic company, Paramount, and great to be working with you. I think one of the themes I was at this summit the last 2 years is the constant question about content discovery, recommendations, how we solve that. And I just introduced as a kind of a multi-market way of delivering content as platforms. So I'll come to a question in a second, because the Powered by TiVo approach purposely has been a content-first UI. So less of the sea of apps approach and more of the surfacing of content very quickly, together with what we do with our conversational voice solution, which really gets people to content fast. So we pride ourselves in what we call the phrase of time to content. So as we think about that and how that links into viewership and engagement for periods of time, particularly with the right content, which is paramount, of course, what are your thoughts on that, and where do you see that evolving and continuing?
Sure. So from Paramount's perspective, we're an MVPD, so multi-channel, multi-platform. That's in our DNA. We always are looking to distribute across a multitude of different platforms, services. As a content creator, as a broadcaster, we know that audiences have more choice than ever to view content. You could be viewing it in your car, and we were talking about this when we were prepping, the BMW partnership that you have. I'm finding myself more and more, I've recently got a car that has connected TV capability. When I'm waiting for my wife, after I've gone to pick her up from her art college on a Thursday night, doesn't matter what time I tend to get there, she's always like 10, 15 minutes later than whatever. So finding myself just sitting in the car, watching, catching up on some of my favorite shows and really enjoying that experience. And I think just that alone is testament to how diversified the viewing experience is. Still, large screen is absolutely, the forefront of what we're doing. When I think about Paramount Pictures, our Hollywood movie studio, actually it's the oldest, longest standing Hollywood movie studio out there. The cinema is a big place as well, but we also recognize with our direct-to-consumer streaming services and our licensing model that audiences are consuming that premium content in a multitude of different ways. So from the Paramount perspective, it's all about making sure that we are distributing our content across all audiences to see all eyeballs. And Paramount doesn't just produce adult-focused content. We own Nickelodeon, which is the largest kids brand in the world, I believe, actually. So there's a multitude of different content for different ages, and that's why diverse distribution is really, well, pardon the pun, but paramount for Paramount.
Yeah, so I think, we're definitely seeing that, to use the phrase, skating where the puck is going, that consumer convenience, because as I mentioned at the start, scale is kind of needs to be a given if you're going to really generate a lot of money out of monetization. Everybody loves the advertising word because it follows by billions, not millions. So it's really that simplicity and consumer experience of having the convenience of watching something in your house to following up in the car, and we had that mobile viewing as well for the younger generation, but that simplicity relies on a lot going under the hood, right? What's happening under the hood there, from having a large amount of metadata that's able to track what's going on between different sources, but also having some consistency in content offerings. And then recommendations really play a key part there. I mean, I know you're sitting beside me, but I am genuinely a Paramount Plus subscriber, and I do watch everything from Mayor of Kingston to Yellowstone to Tulsa King, and literally the recommendations keep popping up. But it's interesting when you're on a platform, when you come out of that environment, it's, some of the better platforms, let's call it, understand that that's kind of what I like to watch. So you start to get content surfacing from different areas, and I think that should be a continued focus around the right recommendations for the right people. So there's things like profiles and other things we were touching on a little bit. Do you want to kind of expand on that area?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Content discovery, inventory discovery in general, that's vital for what Paramount is doing. At least on our direct-to-consumer app proposition, exposing users to new content, recommended content, that's just another lever that we can pull to help communicate with audiences, make sure that they're aware of the wealth of content that's available. I think you mentioned Tulsa King. Well, if you like Tulsa King, you're probably going to like some of the other Taylor Sheridan shows. So it'd be remiss of us not to recommend that, you tune into Yellowstone, for example, and all of the other Midwest-based content that Taylor's been producing, for example. In addition to that, it's all about the user experience.
Yep.
So we spoke a bit about your platform earlier, and whilst that's what we're doing within our own app environment, when it comes to selecting what you want to watch, and I think Ryan and some of the other guys in the panel next door earlier were talking exactly about this, the home screen is super important. Having that intelligent recommendation just makes for a more enriched experience, but with that, you also then have them in a much more engaged place than they were before. So you'll see increase in TV hours, you'll see further loyalty, you'll be able to further build on those fandoms across all of our hit franchises by having those intelligent recommendations there. A lot of the time, people just aren't aware where certain content's available to stream, so having something like universal search within the UI is a game changer.
Yep, no, absolutely. And so we have the scale, we have the search and recommendations, we have the right content popping up, irrespective of the source. That includes linear and streaming, OTT, etc. So how do we make a business out of it, right? What's the monetization view? You obviously have mentioned programmatic as an intro, but there's many other ways that we're involved with display ads and sponsor discovery of tiles. There's lots of little business nuances going on. But what's your view on general, how do you maximize platforms like that as a content owner?
So from my perspective, I've been going really deep into the data, looking at Paramount's monetization data, in particularly with FAST, and understanding users' behavior, like what their current watching habits are, what are their average amount of sessions that they're being exposed to, what content are they enjoying, and how many cumulative TV hours are they seeing. Some of the insight that I've gleaned from this, and I'll just kind of give you the TLDR, so to speak, is that light TV viewers, medium TV viewers, frequent session users over the course of the month, they are highly desirable. We notice it in terms of fill rates, in terms of engagement, in terms of performance results, and attributing that back to return on ad spend. It really proves that those are the desirable users. Now, I'm not saying binge watchers are bad by any stretch, but there's definitely more diversity and variety there with a user who is consuming a multitude of different content in a few different viewing sessions. So from our perspective, that's absolutely what we want to encourage, and by having new and more diverse content on the platform, that can only mean that viewership increases, but therefore those desirable monetizable traits are there as well.
That's right. No, that's great. So, as we think about, some people have mentioned alternate currencies, and TiVo obviously got a lot of experience in their own world on that. And as we get into addressable and how do we drive that and stuff like that, what's your kind of view on, addressable? You just heard about measurements and things like that, those general topics. Where do you sit on that?
Yeah, measurement's a hot topic for me. I think it depends what type of measurement we're talking about, because it's a broad and all-encompassing term. But if we're talking about ad measurement, yes, there's a little bit of a way to go. We're moving from panel-based derived insights into a more big data approach. I was speaking about it earlier with a couple of people in the networking breakout session, but big data, absolutely, that's the way to go. We've got so much more data points available, so many better models available, but what it's currently not doing is truly taking into account the size of the audience. When you think about a connected TV device, it's a one-to-many one, and therefore there's more than one viewer there. There's multiple viewing sessions within the household. There's a multitude of different viewers there. It might be you're watching with your kids, you're watching something with your partner later on. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should measure one device as one user, because TVs are a household device. It's the same with any large screen viewing experience. You're doing it together. So that's where I feel measurement, at least on ad measurement and ad performance, needs to kind of speed up a little bit. But then if we're thinking more about viewability, and that was what was mentioned before, I've got a bit of a different take on it. From at least our CTV perspective, we're looking at, is the screen on, is the device on, is the user truly there watching, or is the stream just running in the background? That's really undesirable. It's inefficient for an advertiser. I think we spoke in that previous panel about some of the pitfalls in viewability. I'm not talking about 100% of the pixels are above the fold and there for a few seconds. Like yes, that's important. What I'm talking about is the user truly there. So we've been running user trials across a load of different devices with a prompt. After a couple of hours of watching, we put a prompt up. The user has to select, are you still watching? And then that validates that that's not just a continuous binge watcher, it's someone that is truly engaged and just wants to binge Dog the Bounty Hunter or something like that. So
That's right.
I think what needs to happen is a bit more sharing of that data, improvements in what is being passed in a viewability capacity, and ultimately that's down to standards in the space catching up with some of these nuances.
That's right. Okay, well, speaking of data, we have a couple of minutes left there. So obviously, we've been operating in the US for many years, and it's a much more mature advertising market than some parts of Europe in particular. But as we think about that maturity coming across into Europe, from an advertising business perspective, you saw what Walmart is doing with Vizio, as mentioned several times today. We have a lot of close relationships with retailers as well, and it's interesting the way retailers, are over the last number of years have really started to invest in capturing their consumer data, and now trying to maximize what to do with that data, right? And so it's a little different between the US and Europe from that perspective. It tends to be more, let's say, controlled environment, but data sales and what they're able to turn that into media and video advertising assets on their own platforms is where the CTVOS conversations are starting to go. And because a lot of these retailers not only have their own consumer first and third party data, they obviously have their own, whether it's training, whether it's e-commerce platforms, whether it's pop-up dialogue and banner ads and all sorts of things. They're starting to understand the usage of the CTV more to be able to maximize those assets. I mean, what do you think about where the closer to the consumer that understanding gets as retailers and others in the direct to consumer?
We're seeing shoppable ads, more engaged ads coming forward. I think when you look at like what Vizio has done with Walmart, actually we have a partnership with Walmart in the US. If you're a Walmart Plus subscriber, you get Paramount Plus as part of the bundle. But when it comes to CTV, there's more data than ever, and these data-driven advertisers are there and using that available data to leverage the CRM data, that first-party data that they've held, in order to speak to the audiences more clearly, to suggest recommended products that might resonate well with them. So yeah, it comes as no surprise. Paramount, on the other hand, is built for programmatic. We are directly looking at how we can provide all of the necessary data points for those data-driven advertisers to make an informed decision and buy programmatically in any which way that they want. So whether that's clean rooms, data collaboration, or even just getting down to like an always-on PMP where they can cherry pick based on some of those data points. We're also looking at things like pseudo-anonymized identifiers, enriching the bid stream with those like IDs, and that will enable buyers to make better informed decision and ultimately attribute it back to return on ad spend.
Yep. Okay, we're just coming up on time. So certainly, UK being a very important market and a maturing market as it shifts into more of what they're doing with advertising and data, as well as what's happening in mainland Europe. So very interesting time. I wonder what we'll be talking about this time 12 months at a Connected TV Summit, but I look forward to it. Thank you for your time.
Likewise, thank you.